Hey, kia ora koutou, Markie here with the characteristic Maori greeting and the shaky camera. Okay, so this is a channel full of substance but with no style whatsoever. So welcome back if you've visited us before, and hello if you're a new visitor. And you'll either like this or hate it. So see how you get on. This isn't the channel for everyone. So song lyrics. So this started off. This is kind of morphed. It started off as a series called Psych Songs, the Psych Song series, which is all about songs that had a psychological meaning, or kind of said something about the human condition or certain psychological complaints or illnesses or disorders and that kind of thing, and then I just kind of got into doing stuff about song lyrics because I love song lyrics. So so this is about song lyrics, and then it kind of tended to kind of stray more into the kind of spiritual, really. So I guess there's two meanings to the word psyche, soul and mind. So I guess it's still psych songs in a way. So I've been doing Nephilim songs, the Fields of the Nephilim to be precise and to give their full title. A fantastic band that not many of you will have heard of. So you might be watching this because you are a Nephilim fan. The chances are that you are. If you haven't heard of the Nephilim before, do check them out. But they are not easy listening. I love them, but it took me a long time to get into them. And they're not to everyone's taste. They are marvelous. One of my favorite bands ever, really. But they are not to everyone's taste. So yeah, lots of things you can take or leave, really. You can take or leave the style of my videos. You can take or leave the Fields of the Nephilim. But I'm going to carry on talking about them anyway. And I'm going to talk about a song called Power. Okay, so Power. So first of all, before I get into the review, I'm not always necessarily the best person to... I always say I'm not the best person to review films because my kind of memory is terrible, my eyesight's terrible, and I miss everything. Thank God for other people who post lyrics, because I am terrible at actually working out what song lyrics are, and I create my own mondegreens. What's a mondegreen, Markie? A mondegreen is a commonly misunderstood... You get bonus facts on this channel, you see. That's part of what you get. A mondegreen is a commonly misunderstood song lyric. So I'll give you a good example, two good examples of mondegreens. One is Led Zeppelin, and the song, I can't remember what the bloody song's called now. It goes something like, close the door, put out the light, Moby won't be home tonight. And everyone thinks it's Moby, but it's No, They Won't Be Home. So I'm not sure if it's the song Moby Dick or another song. Did they do a song called Moby Dick? I don't know. I didn't research this clearly. And the other one is Creedence Clearwater, Bad Moon Rising, and the common misinterpretation of the lyrics are, there's a bathroom on the right. And apparently, John Fogerty? He actually sometimes sings it that way because it's become so well known that he just, laughs along with it, really, which I think is rather good. Unlike Heather Small, who I was disappointed with. Heather Small who was in M People, was on tour with, and I was living in Devon at the time, and I went to see her, and she played One Night in Devon. And if that was me, when she went to play the One Night in Heaven song, I would have had to have sung One Night in Devon. I'd have had to have changed those lyrics, but she didn't. How can you resist that? See, this is why I'm not like normal people, really. This is where being neurodiverse kind of kicks in, really. I just could not imagine singing One Night in Heaven, in Devon, for one night, and not changing the words to One Night in Devon. But there we go. So, this is what I mean about this channel. So, Power by the Fields of the Nephilim. So, Power, I can't even remember which album it's from, so I'm sure somebody will remind me. I think it's one of the songs that most lives up to their epithet, spaghetti metal. Okay, so there's one of the kind of names that the rock press gave Fields of Nephilim, particularly in the early days, because a lot of their songs have a kind of a Wild West kind of theme, and I believe what they were trying to evoke is kind of post-apocalypse Wild West, so not kind of not the 1800s, but some kind of future point where life has perhaps returned to something like the 1800s, and hence their image with the big wide-brimmed hats and covered in dust and all that kind of stuff. I believe that's true. Tell me if that's a myth. So Power, I think, is got a really... And what do you mean by spaghetti metal? So basically what that means is spaghetti westerns, and the soundtracks of spaghetti westerns, and the Fields of Nephilim sounding a bit like that and evoking that whole kind of cowboy thing. And I think Power, just the sounds of the guitar, the riffs on Power, to me are particularly kind of spaghetti metal. I think it kind of sounds very Wild Westy. So when I first heard it, and I didn't listen to the lyrics too intently, I kind of took it thinking about things like power struggles, kind of like outlaws and kind of gunfights and all that kind of thing. But Power is actually one of their more spiritual, esoteric songs, and I've had a bit of a clue on this. Now I heard from somewhere. And I think it was that Carl McCoy said somewhere in an interview, or said to somebody, that it was about some kind of spiritual entity preying on a woman and taking her energy. And I think whether I've invented that or misheard that, or whether that's mythical, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's what this song is about. And Nephilim lyrics are always, or they nearly always seem to be evocative rather than explicit. So they can bring up lots of images and lots of things. They kind of create a mood and create a picture, really, but leave you enough ambiguity for you to kind of allow for your own imaginings, really. And sometimes they have more than one element to them. So I think that the song Power is about an incubus preying on a woman. What is an incubus, Markie? Well, you probably heard the terms incubus, succubus. I mean, there are several bands, aren't there? There's a band called Incubus Succubus, who I think are a folk band, and I think there's a metal band called Incubus, and I had one of their albums once, but wasn't overly impressed with it. However, the Incubus Succubus I did like. So, what is an incubus and what's a succubus? Well, again, this is kind of based on legend, myth, and occult. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is what people believe and what's been written and what's been understood. Okay, so I'm not saying this is real. Okay, and I'm not saying it's not real. I'm certainly not expecting you to believe any of this stuff. Okay, I'm just talking about common understandings. So they are demons that basically have come to people in their sleep and have sex with them. Okay, and traditionally an incubus is one of these demons that will prey on women, and a succubus is one that will prey on men. Now, and the plural is, because the plural of us is I, in most cases. So incubus, if there's more than one of them, they become incubi, and succubus, more than one of them, they become succubus. Succubi. So, and one of the beliefs is that they aren't necessarily kind of like specialist, gender fussy kind of entities, that actually an incubus and a succubus is the same thing, but it will kind of, when it's preying on a woman that's heterosexual, it might take the form of a male demon or a man, and when it's preying on the opposite, it would take the opposite form. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say. How can you remember the difference between incubus and succubus? I struggled with this, but then I thought kind of the word succu kind of gives a good clue to the fact that it's something that preys on men. I probably said the opposite before. I'm not very good with opposites. So how is this kind of, how is this, what are the clues in the song to this? Okay, so well, first of all, I need to kind of talk a little bit more about kind of the esoterics of this. in that. So the belief is that somebody will be troubled by a spirit, and they'll feel like they're being molested or raped in their sleep. They may or may not be consenting to this. And certainly, it could be an explanation for kind of sexual dreams, for wet dreams and that kind of thing. Particularly, when that might be frowned upon. It was the spirit what done it. But I think, and I'm not alone in this thinking, that they are a form of energy vampire. And I've talked about this this theory in my series of videos on demonic possession, where I posited the theory that perhaps what we think of as demons are actually kind of vampiric entities that not off our blood, which is just a metaphor, but off our energy. What do we mean by our energy? Well, we're not talking about something that's kind of physical. We're not talking about our blood sugar, for example. We're talking about the subtle energy that is believed to exist in the bodies, according to Chinese medicine, according to Indian medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and those kind of traditions. The chi or the prana, the energy that makes up the aura, the energy that flows through the meridians in our body if we're into acupuncture or any of those kind of Chinese medicine approaches. And there's a lot written about psychic vampires, and I want to talk some more about psychic vampires because I have a lot to say on this subject. I have a deep interest. I've done lots of research into this. Psychic vampires, that would probably be one of the most woo-woo videos I've ever done, I think. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that on Patreon for patrons only, because I kind of feel the need to kind of maybe hold that one back a little bit. Because I think it's I don't know, it's too woo-woo for YouTube, too woo-woo for you. But I want to talk about that and go into some depth on psychic vampirism. But I think this is what the Nephs are getting at here. They are talking about a spirit which is targeted a woman and is stealing her sexual energy, either by preying on her sexually in an aggressive way, in that kind of that form of kind of psychic rape, or when she's having sex, or when she's masturbating, or when she's thinking about sexual thoughts, this entity is stealing that energy. It's a good, when somebody's aroused, you could kind of say that their energy increases. There's so one of the things about psychic vampirism, which we'll get into more in the kind of secret video on the other side on my Patreon channel, is that when somebody is in a heightened emotional state or is physically aroused or sexually aroused, then there's more energy. It's easier to steal the energy, which is why one of the theories is that it's a little bit like Monsters Inc. when they're trying to steal the children's tears, but what actually they want to do is create extreme emotional states like fear and terror and hate and despair, because that makes people more vulnerable to have their energy eaten and gobbled up by these entities that are energy creatures. Okay, so I'm going to flick to the lyrics, which I've just got up on the screen here. Now, this is one individual's interpretation of lyrics, and I don't know if it's right or not, but it's bound to be far more accurate than anything that I could come up with through listening with because I've got sensory processing disorder, which is why I'm really bad at kind of lyrics, and I used to get things terrible. I mean, War Pigs by Black Sabbath, rather than they leave that all to the poor, I used to think that was they keep their ear holes to the floor. So there you go. Okay, so power feeds your long loving hours. Okay, so I think with this, they're not being very specific about which way the energy's going. So they talk about feeding, but what I think they mean is feeding from. So I think power feeding from your long loving hours. So that would kind of imply that this entity is kind of hanging in the hanging above the bed, voyeuristically feeding off this woman's lovemaking or this woman's masturbation. I can give everlasting power. Again, I think that's more about receiving everlasting power. Flower, the world opens, you need a simple flower. I kind of wonder whether that's a kind of a delicate sexual reference of a lady flower. I don't know. A feeling also. They've got a sound on this version of the lyrics, but I always thought that was sour. So draining me, now drain me from power. So again, I think, the draining is being done by the entity. But it's a little bit ambiguous. Oh, the wide open stench, you're also sour. I can't give, but I receive for hours. Now, I think that's the entity talking. I can't give, but I receive for hours. And then a kind of, I think it's like a second chorus, draining, or is it a second chorus or is it mid-late? Draining static from the attic wall. Okay, so one theory is that kind of entities dwell in kind of dark corners, sometimes behind beams or that kind of place, and up above us where they can kind of drop down like kind of wimpsy spiders. A power so schismatic. See, the heart is burning. I call it static. So there's a few references to static. So draining static from it. So the static I think is a reference for energy. Now, the energy field around us, we know we do have a electromagnetic energy field, and we also have static around us, don't we? We do contain static and have static going through us. Occasionally, if you touch somebody and you get an electric shock. If you've had that thing where you kiss somebody and you get an electric shock between your noses. So I think but they're using static there as a kind of analogy for energy. So it's a thing in the attic that feeds off your energy. I need static, so charismatic. You're so tragic. My love's so manic. I have the power, use it frantic. My body's turned. I'm a sex fanatic. So even my touch makes you cower. Drain me off my bleeding hour. Attic walls. Yeah, so that's what I think that's about. It's creepy, isn't it? A creepy concept. And I've spoken to more than one person. It's not really through going out of my way, or talking to people, bringing up the subject or anything like that. But I've known two people that felt that they were being sexually assaulted. One by a spirit. One was in a dream state, and the other was actually awake and in a haunted hotel room, which was known for being haunted. And also, I think this incubi succubi thing, I would be remiss if I didn't mention sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis is interesting. Some people think that sleep paralysis is, purely a physical mind state thing. And some people think that sleep paralysis is always some form of psychic attack. People don't ever be able to seem to grasp kind of that things can be either or, do they? I think probably in the most cases of sleep paralysis, I think it's probably is just a physical thing. So what sleep paralysis is understood to be is when we sleep, there's a mechanism that kicks in that stops us acting out our dreams. So obviously for some people it doesn't work so well. So for some people that sleepwalk, it's not that mechanism isn't working quite so well. But what can happen is that we can go to sleep, and the body can go to sleep, and we can go into a sleep state. But also the conscious mind can actually wake up. We can kind of wake up asleep, if that kind of makes sense. So we're kind of part of us is asleep. Bodily, we're asleep, and the sleep paralysis mechanism has kicked in, but we are actually awake, or part of us is awake. Is probably the best way to put it. So what happens in sleep paralysis is that we try to move and can't, which is terrifying. And some of the other experiences that often come with it is like a heavy weight on the chest, like something sitting on you, and that is probably something that's caused a lot of the mythology around incubi and succubi, that this kind of demon is sitting on your chest. And there's pictures, there's old kind of historic pictures and paintings that kind of depict this. I think one's a William Blake one, actually. I may be wrong. And the other thing with sleep paralysis is people often have a sense of dread and fear that seems to come with it for some reason. I mean, not being able to move is pretty scary. And you can't scream or anything like that if you feel like you're trying to scream but you can't scream. But often people with sleep paralysis think they see things, or experience seeing things, hearing things, or the sense that something is in the room with them. Usually something malevolent, sorry about that. beepy phone. No rest for the wicked. So so that kind of gave rise, I think, to a lot of the incubi, succubi mythology. But I think, you know, I'm very open-minded, as you know, and I think there could be two separate things going on here. I think some people, their sleep paralysis is just literally, you know, what the body and something that's going on with the body and the mind, and some people's sleep paralysis is something else. And there's beliefs that sometimes certain people can travel on the astral with the purpose of sucking energy from people. So they become, if you like you know, they become this kind of almost like a spirit form that comes into the house and sucks the energy. Not necessarily with that kind of sexual element to it, but the giving, the transmitting and the receiving of energy is often turned into metaphor, and the best metaphor, one of the good metaphors for that is sex, because sex is about kind of giving and receiving of energy. So sometimes it's not a sexual thing, but we sexualize it because that metaphor kind of seems to explain it better. Okay, so yeah, creepy song. So what I want to say is at the end really is that you know, people do experience this stuff in different degrees. It could be sleep paralysis, you know, it could be a whole number of things. One of the things that I do provide help for is anybody that's freaked out by anything weird, to put it kind of bluntly and in kind of layman's language. So, you know, the paranormal, the spiritual, the otherworldly, you know, so if you know, for example, somebody has what they perceive to be a UFO experience, or what they perceive to be a ghost experience, or they feel like they might have been cursed or what have you. As a psychotherapist, I'm very happy to provide support for people with that. And where I come from is I'm not going to laugh at you. I'm going to take it seriously. From the viewpoint that something has happened, not necessarily from the viewpoint that X or Y has happened, but that your experience was very real. Okay, and because I have kind of a lot of knowledge around kind of spiritual and occult things, and also have a lot of knowledge around mental health, I feel like I'm in a good place to kind of give balanced guidance. So, so you know, if you talk to me, you're not going to get locked up, but at the same time, if I think that you are suffering a psychotic episode, I will recommend that you get that kind of help. And what I will do as well is not come at this from any belief system or from any denomination or any sense of the definite. So I won't come to you and say, right, this is what's happened to you, or this is definitely what's happened to you, and this is what you need to do. You know, I'm not going to suck you into any cult or belief system or anything like that. Because I think that's quite abusive, really. So it's kind of that impartial, respectful support that I offer. So I didn't really intend this to be a plug, but I just mentioned that really, that you know, you can talk to me if you think, oh, you know, I've experienced some of this and want to talk about it, but don't want people to dismiss you or tell you you're mad or laugh at you or anything like that. So that's that. And I've also reminded myself of another thing. Is that, you know, what I think is interesting is that, you know, people experience the same kind of phenomena over, you know, generations and, you know, over the centuries, and they interpret them in different ways. So one of the things that people are experiencing, you know, alien abduction, where you know, a female or an opposite sex alien forces sex upon them, or probes them, or extracts semen. So it's kind of the same, you know, it's kind of very similar, isn't it? It's very similar. So some entity, but we put it in the context of an alien. So, what is it? I think it's Buffalo Springfield, or did they just do a cover version of it? But the lyrics, something's happening here, what it is ain't exactly clear. But brilliant, evocative songwriting. You know, this kind of creepy leech, this kind of creature that's kind of just feeding off the sexual energy in one way or another from this woman who probably has no idea. She's probably feeling exhausted. She's probably troubled, probably having nightmares, probably, feeling depressed and anxious, and it's because this thing has been feeding upon her. So, if you want to know more about kind of psychic vampire stuff, and you want me to be a bit more candid, I will. I haven't done it yet, so don't sign up to Patreon looking for my video, because I haven't made it yet, and knowing me, might not make it for some time, but I will make it, and it will be on the Patreon channel, and details how to sign up to that down below. Hope you found that interesting. Keep listening to the Nefs, and ring and marry.